Chapter 195. In the majestic hall. Su Qin was overjoyed. 2 years, although it's a bit long, but condensing the microdomain is not a waste of time. Su Qin nodded slightly and thought to himself. If the sect masters of the major overseas sects knew what Su Qin was thinking, their eyes would probably turn red with jealousy. For them, even if it took 80 or 100 years to condense the microdomain, they would still be ecstatic and would want to invite overseas legends to celebrate. As for the 2 years, these sect masters probably wouldn't even think about it. Because it was too incredible. What could he do in 2 years? He could easily go into seclusion for more than 2 years. Not to mention condensing the microdomain, even if he just sorted out his true essence a little, 2 years would pass. Condense. Su Qin's mind moved. Suddenly, an invisible force, with him as the center, spread out to a radius of 100 feet. This 100 feet radius is my domain. Within it, any power is under my control. Su Qin carefully felt the subtleties of the domain, a thoughtful look on his face. There was an essential difference between a domain and the power of heaven and earth. For example, if 2 legends fought, no matter where and when, they could control the power of heaven and earth as a means to suppress each other. After all, the power of heaven and earth came from heaven and earth. As long as one was a legend, they could control it. At most the difference was the size of the domain. But a domain was different. If a legend was in the domain, even if he was at the peak of the 5th or 6th level, he would be shocked to find that he couldn't control the power of heaven and earth at all, as if he had fallen from the legend realm. To put it simply, within the domain, Su Qin was the only master. As long as Su Qin didn't want to, no legend could borrow a trace of power from his domain. Not bad, not bad. No wonder they say that a legend who has condensed a domain and a legend who hasn't condensed a domain are on a completely different level. Su Qin looked amazed. Although Su Qin was still at the 7th level. But with the support of the domain, even if he was besieged by dozens of legends of the same level, he was fearless. If the besieging legends of the same level fell into his domain, their life and death would be under Su Qin's control. Of course, no 7th heavenly layer legend would be so stupid as to barge into a domain. After all, Su Qin's domain had just been formed, and it only covered a radius of 1,000 feet. For an ordinary person, a range of 100 feet might be very large, but in the eyes of a legend, it was just a matter of a thought. The myth warriors were not fools. It was impossible for them to rush forward when they knew that they were no match for the enemy. What a pity! If only the range of the domain was a little bigger. A hint of regret appeared on Su Qin's face. Compared to Su Qin's world energy that spanned 100 miles, the domain of 100 zhang had shrunk significantly. However, this thought only flashed through Su Qin's mind. Compared to an impenetrable domain, the so-called power of heaven and earth was a joke. It was like the difference between 10 taels of cotton and 1 tael of gold. It said that as long as one steps into the earth immortal realm, the microdomain will transform into a great domain, instantly enveloping a radius of several hundred miles. Su Qin was lost in thought. The domain that he had condensed now, to be precise, was just a microdomain. It could even be said that it was the prototype of a domain. But even so, it had such great power. One could imagine how earth-shattering the great domain of the earth immortal great Arhat would be. Su Qin continued to experience the various magical effects of the microdomain, and finally, his mind slowly calmed down. That's right. Let's see if the demon god's blade that I obtained in the cave world can break through the domain. Su Qin suddenly thought. The demon god's blade was the sharpest weapon among all the weapons that Su Qin had ever seen. It was terrifying to the extreme. Even Su Qin couldn't block the demon god's blade with just the strength of his body. Of course, Su Qin couldn't block it, but the demon god's blade couldn't do anything to Su Qin. Because with Su Qin's strength, he wouldn't let the demon god's blade touch him at all. Besides, Su Qin also has the ability to regenerate flesh and blood. Unless the demon god's blade can completely annihilate Su Qin in an instant, otherwise, Su Qin is immortal and can recover indefinitely. Buzz. A strange long blade that was shaped like a sickle and curved like a full moon appeared in Su Qin's hand. In an instant, a deep aura filled the air, making people feel as if they were in the abyss of hell. Not bad. Su Qin held the hilt and waved it casually. Even if Su Qin didn't use any power, when he waved the demon god's blade, he could feel the extremely sharp blade aura filling the air, almost piercing through the air. Domain. Su Qin's mind moved, and the misty power of the domain wrapped around the demon god's blade. Clang! The demon god's blade let out a blade cry, and Su Qin waved it gently, and a dark and deep blade light appeared, breaking through the power of the domain, and finally slowly dissipating. The demon god's blade can break through the domain, but the domain can also wear down the demon god's blade. Su Qin touched his chin and judged in his heart. It had to be said that the demon god's blade was very terrifying. It could even break through the invisible and intangible domain. It must be known that even 7th or 8th heavenly layer gods and demons can't do anything to the domain without condensing a miniature domain, but since the demon god's blade can cut through the power of the domain, it can be seen how sharp it is. Su Qin's thoughts fluctuated, and he put the demon god's blade back into the system space. The system space was unique. As long as Su Qin in the cave world put the treasures he obtained from signing in into the system space, Su Qin in Chang and City would be able to take out the demon god's blade from the system space. And vice versa. The domain has just been formed, it needs to be stabilized. Su Qin slowly closed his eyes again and fell into cultivation again. Su Qin spent 2 years to condense the miniature domain. Naturally, he planned to completely stabilize the domain before considering other things. And after Su Qin continued his seclusion, Ruanqing outside the East Palace was inexplicably shocked. Just now, the heaven and earth essence qi within a radius of hundreds of miles shook together. If Ruanqing hadn't seen it with her own eyes, she would never have believed it. Even for a mythical warrior, the limit of control of the heaven and earth essence qi is 100 miles. As for hundreds of miles, I'm afraid that only the real peak mythical warriors can reach it. Master is too strong. Ruanqing sighed softly, her face full of awe. In the past year or so, Su Qin didn't stop Ruanqing from cultivating. On the contrary, in the first year, he often guided Ruanqing. And now, with the help of the Eastern Palace's cultivation environment, which was not inferior to overseas, coupled with the recovery of the vitality and Su Qin's occasional guidance, Ruanqing's cultivation had improved again, reaching the peak of the 3rd heavenly layer. Ruanqing even had a faint illusion that if he was given a few decades or 100 years, he was confident that he could break through the shackles and enter the 4th heaven. It should be known that even overseas, a 4th heaven mythical warrior was enough to serve as an elder protector of the high sects, and could be said to be an expert second only to the sect master and the vice sect master. Ruanqing originally thought that he had no hope of entering this level in his lifetime, but in less than 2 years in Chang and City, he saw hope. The recovery of the vitality tide is becoming more and more obvious. Ruanqing looked at the sky and muttered to himself. Although a large part of the reason why he could improve so quickly was because of Su Qin's guidance, the influence of the environment was also not small. It's been almost 2 years. The recovery of the vitality tide is much faster than I thought. The sect masters of the high sects overseas should have noticed it by now, right? A trace of worry appeared on Ruanqing's face. Even if the sect masters of the high sects did not believe in the existence of the land of great battles at first and thought that overseas would continue to prosper, as time passed and the vitality tide became more and more intense, with the ability of those sect masters, they must have realized something. However, with master strength, even in the face of the high sects with thousands of years of inheritance, he should be qualified to negotiate, Ruanqing guessed in his heart. Just as Su Qin was in seclusion and the world was gradually falling into peace, a man in a blood-red robe appeared out of thin air, walking in the air. Wherever he passed, his aura shrouded and suppressed all things. All the martial artists were terrified. Under the aura of the man in the blood-red robe, they did not even dare to raise their heads and knelt down one after another, as if welcoming a supreme monarch. It was only after the man in the blood-red robe had completely left that the martial artists reluctantly straightened their backs. Who is he? Why is his aura so terrifying? Riding the wind, could it be that he is a martial arts legend? Countless martial artists trembled in their hearts and kept talking. Even if the vitality has recovered and cultivation has become easier, the existence of a martial arts legend is still unattainable. Since the imperial teacher of the Meng Yuan Empire was killed by Su Qin outside Chang'an City, no new martial arts legend has been born in the world. But now, this man in a blood-red robe set off a huge wave in everyone's heart. At this moment, another news came out. Isn't he the Blood Kill Gates legend from 200 years ago? As soon as this news came out, the entire martial arts world was in an uproar. The legend of the Blood Kill Gate had crossed the sea more than 200 years ago and disappeared. Not only the legend of the Blood Kill Gate, but all the legends who crossed the sea have never returned. The world is going to be in chaos again, an old warrior thought sorrowfully. And at this moment, the legend of the Blood Kill Gate in a blood-red robe came outside the headquarters of the Blood Kill Gate. No one? The legend of the Blood Kill Gate frowned. His terrifying divine sense covered inch by inch and finally found a disciple hiding nearby. Ancestor, you are finally back. The Blood Kill Gate disciple immediately burst into tears. Every disciple of the Blood Kill Gate has to kneel and worship the portrait of the legend of the Blood Kill Gate. Therefore, this disciple recognized the legend of the Blood Kill Gate at first sight. What the hell happened? The legend of the Blood Kill Gate frowned. Ancestor, our Blood Kill Gate was forced by the legend of the Empire of Tang to disperse our disciples. The Blood Kill Gate disciple hurriedly told what had happened over the years. The Empire of Tang? A legend? Not bad. I didn't expect another legend to be born in the 200 years I was gone. The legend of the Blood Kill Gate disciple nodded slightly, as if he was appreciating the younger generation. However, since you dare to provoke my Blood Kill Gate, you are courting death. A strong murderous intent flashed in the depths of the legend of the Blood Kill Gate disciple's eyes. Ancestor, the legend of the Empire of Tang once killed 3 of our peak grade 1 experts from thousands of miles away. Ancestor, you have to avenge us, the Blood Kill Gate disciple said again. What? Thousands of miles away? The legend of the Blood Kill Gate disciple's calm expression finally changed. P.S. Also, don't panic, don't worry, I am writing and will post it around noon. In addition, I am looking for a guaranteed monthly ticket at the beginning of the month. Chapter 196. A legend was high up in the air, riding the wind like an immortal. However, no matter how similar it was just similar, not a real immortal. A legend was also a human, and they had their own limits. For example, a third heavenly layer legend like the Patriarch of Bloodkill, even if he went all out, he could only be 10 or 20 miles away. As for the martial arts legend in Chang'an City, it was simply inconceivable and unheard of for him to attack from thousands of miles away. Even in the endless sea where martial arts flourished, Patriarch Bloodkill had never heard of such an incredible scene. A bunch of nonsense. The Patriarch of Bloodkill's expression was uncertain, and finally he sneered, "Did you see that scene with your own eyes?" When the Patriarch of Bloodkill said this, the Bloodkill Gate disciple was slightly stunned and immediately replied, "Patriarch, I also heard that, humph." "I understand." The Patriarch of Bloodkill coldly snorted, "Your level is too low, you don't know the means of a legend." The Patriarch of Bloodkill's expression returned to normal, and he instantly figured everything out. How could the Patriarch of the Bloodkill sect not know of such a thing? For example, when 2 legends fought, the mountains collapsed and the earth cracked, and the aftermath spread dozens of miles away. If this scene was seen by ordinary people, they would definitely think that it was a fight between gods and immortals, and then the more they talked about it, the more ridiculous it became. But in fact, in the eyes of a legend like the Patriarch of Bloodkill, it was just a fight between powerhouses of the same level. It was nothing at all. According to the Bloodkill Gate disciple, the legend of Chang'an City may have some ability, but the means to attack from thousands of miles away were far inferior. Don't worry, I will definitely take revenge for the Bloodkill Gate, but now is not the time. I have to wait for the permission of those people. The Patriarch of Blood-Kill pondered for a while and said lightly, "Those people?" The Blood-Kill Gate disciple's face suddenly turned pale. In his eyes, the Patriarch of Blood-Kill was already a godlike figure, but now, the Patriarch of Blood-Kill actually called them, "those people." "There's no harm in telling you." Patriarch Blood-Kill glanced at the disciples of the Blood-Kill Gate and casually said, "This time, I didn't return to this continent alone. I came back with several distinguished characters." As the Patriarch Blood-Kill spoke to hear, he paused for a moment before continuing, "Those several great characters all have venerated statuses. If you encounter them, you absolutely cannot overstep your boundaries. Otherwise, not only will you be annihilated, but I might also be implicated." Patriarch Blood-Kill warned. The Blood-Kill Gate disciple's face was as pale as paper as he bowed his head and replied. The Blood-Kill Gate's mythological ancestor had appeared. This news quickly spread throughout the world like lightning. Now that the Empire of Tang had unified all the countries, their power was unparalleled. The Blood-Kill Gate was forced to dismiss their disciples in order to avoid the purge of the Empire of Tang. At this time, the appearance of the mythical ancestor of the Blood-Kill Gate was tantamount to seeing the light at the end of the tunnel for the disciples of the Blood-Kill Gate who were hiding everywhere like stray dogs. Why is the Patriarch of the Blood-Kill Gate back? I don't know. Did he come back because of the Blood-Kill Gate? It's over. The return of the Blood-Kill Gate has greatly boosted the prestige of the Blood-Kill Gate. Our good days are coming to an end. Countless martial artists in Jianghu were worried. For a long time, the Blood-Kill Gate had taken pleasure in provoking the countries in the world and driving a wedge between the Jianghu and Jianghu. The prosperity of the Blood-Kill Gate meant that there would be more killings in the world. However, I don't know what the mythological ancestor of Chang and City thinks about his return. Someone couldn't help but ask. As soon as these words came out, all the martial artists were silent. 3 peak grade 1 of the Blood-Kill Gate fell in the hands of the mythological expert of Chang and City. In addition, the Blood-Kill Gate was forced to dismiss their disciples because of this. How could the Patriarch of the Blood-Kill Gate ignore such grievances? Who do you think is stronger between the Patriarch of the Blood-Kill Gate and the mythological expert of Chang and City? A martial artist asked with great interest. I think it should be the mythological expert of Chang and City, right? After all, a few years ago, the imperial teacher of Mengyuan City was killed by the mythological expert of Chang and City. The imperial teacher of Mengyuan City is just a legend. How can he be compared with the Patriarch of the Blood-Kill Gate? Yes, the Patriarch of the Blood-Kill Gate became a legend 200 years ago. Now that he has been abroad for 200 years, his strength must have improved a lot. The mythological expert of Chang and City can kill the imperial teacher of Mengyuan City, but he may not be able to defeat the Patriarch of the Blood-Kill Gate. Countless martial artists talked quickly. In their view, Su Qin's strength was unfathomable, but the Patriarch of the Blood-Kill Gate was also not weak. Especially in the past 200 years, God knows how high the Patriarch of the Blood-Kill Gate had reached. In my opinion, the mythological expert of Chang and City should not be the opponent of the Patriarch of the Blood-Kill Gate. An old martial artist made the final decision. Although Su Qin was able to suppress the world, the Patriarch of the Blood-Kill Gate was invincible 200 years ago. In the absence of a head-on fight between the two, everyone felt that the Patriarch of the Blood-Kill Gate was stronger. After all, when it comes to martial arts cultivation, one side has 200 years more than the other. Who is stronger and who is weaker is obvious at a glance. Just as the world was talking about it. Chang'an City. Inside the Imperial Palace. It is indeed the Patriarch of the Blood-Kill Gate. The Emperor of Tang's expression was dignified as he looked at the information in his hand and said in a deep voice. Now that the Empire of Tang had unified the world, as early as the first appearance of the Patriarch of the Blood-Kill Gate, the relevant information was passed to the Emperor of Tang. However, at that time, the Emperor of Tang still had doubts in his heart. But as time passed, more and more information came, and the Emperor of Tang had no choice but to believe it. Your Majesty, what should we do now? A minister stood up, looked at the Emperor of Tang and asked. The Emperor of Tang was silent for a while, and then said, "I will mobilize the army and strengthen the patrol of Chang and city." When the other ministers heard this, they looked at each other, opened their mouths, but did not continue to say anything. In fact, they could only do as the Emperor of Tang said. Otherwise, what else could they do? Could they take the initiative to find the Patriarch of the Blood Kill Gate and take him down? Not to mention whether the Empire of Tang could take down the Patriarch of the Blood Kill Gate. Who could be sure of the whereabouts of the Patriarch of the Blood Kill Gate? A legend could ride the wind and travel tens of thousands of miles in a day. Maybe one day he was in the far west, and the next day he would be in the far north. After the end of the court meeting, the Emperor of Tang hurried to the East Palace. "Mr. Ruan, hasn't the third brother contacted you yet?" The Emperor of Tang found Ruan Qing and asked. Although Ruan Qing claimed to be Su Qin's servant, the Emperor of Tang did not dare to really treat a legend as a servant. Instead, he called him Mr. In the Empire of Tang, Mr. was an honorific, such as teacher. No. Ruan Qing glanced at the Emperor of Tang and asked doubtfully, "Do you have something to say to Master?" For some reason, the Patriarch of the Blood Kill Gate from 200 years ago has returned. The Emperor of Tang roughly told him what he knew. It seems that the great sects overseas have begun to intervene. Ruan Qing thought for a while and sighed softly. "Then what should we do now?" The Emperor of Tang did not know what the great sects meant, but he knew it was not a good thing. "If it was just the Patriarch of the Blood Kill Gate alone, I could deal with him, but in addition to the Patriarch of the Blood Kill Gate, those great sects must have sent other disciples." Ruan Qing shook his head. "Now, we can only wait for Master to come out," Ruan Qing said helplessly. Almost at the same time, all kinds of incredible news spread all over the world. For example, someone once saw a woman in white flying in the ice field of the extreme north, like a fairy from the upper realm. Someone saw a man in blue with a sword on his back, hundreds of meters in one step, as if he was measuring the world. Someone also saw a Daoist standing above the clouds, indifferently overlooking all living beings, as if he was looking for something. For a time, the world was shaken. If the Patriarch of the Blood Kill Gate who appeared out of thin air at the beginning was just shocking, then the appearance of these suspected legends one after another made people panic. What the hell happened? Could it be that these people, like the Patriarch of the Blood Kill Gate, returned from overseas? That's the only possibility, otherwise it's rare for a legend to appear in an era. How could so many appear now? Many martial artists were frightened and uneasy. And at this moment, on a high mountain, there were several figures standing leisurely. Among these figures, there was a woman in white like a fairy, a man in blue with a sword on his back, and a Taoist in a Taoist robe and so on. At this moment, because of the existence of these figures, the entire top of the mountain was faintly shrouded in an inexplicable aura. "How's the investigation?" The woman in white's voice was crisp and clear. She was the contemporary goddess of the Snow God Palace from overseas, named Bing Ling. This time, she came on the order of her master to determine whether this continent was the legendary land of the Great Battle. As for the others, they were also heaven's prides from overseas. Although the current vitality of this continent is still far inferior to our sects overseas, its growth rate is far faster than overseas. The man in blue with a sword on his back paused for a while and continued, "According to the current trend, in 100 years at most, the vitality of this place will be comparable to overseas, and in 200 years, it will completely surpass overseas." As soon as these words came out, everyone's face changed. Then what are we waiting for? Why don't we join forces and take over the Empire of Tang, completely control this continent, and then welcome our sects? A rough man said loudly. When the people on the scene arrived, they knew that this continent was ruled by a country called the Empire of Tang. Take over the Empire of Tang? The Taoist in a Taoist robe frowned slightly. "But I heard that there seems to be a legend in Chang and city of the Empire of Tang, and his strength is not weak." "Not weak?" The rough man grinned and said, "Compared to overseas, this place is not even considered immortal. Any legend can be invincible for an era. But in front of the disciples of our sects, it is nothing. Any one of us can sweep this place. The rough man's tone was full of pride. That's right. The man in blue with a sword on his back nodded slightly. As disciples of the sects, whether it is cultivation methods, secret skills, or heritage, how can this place be compared to the mortals? That's good. Bing Ling, the contemporary goddess of the snow god palace, nodded slightly. In that case, let's go to Chang'an City. If that legend is sensible and takes the initiative to lower his head, we can spare his life. If not, we can kill him directly. Under Chang'an City, in the majestic hall, Su Qin slowly opened his eyes. The domain is finally almost stable. Su Qin's face flashed with satisfaction. Chapter 197. Su Qin sat cross-legged with a smile on his face. During this period of time, Su Qin, in addition to stabilizing the newly formed miniature domain, also often experienced the various magical effects of the domain. As a means that only myths of at least the seventh heaven could master, the domain was far more than just killing the enemy. At least, Su Qin found that the domain had various effects such as protection, concealment, and saving people. In addition, Su Qin also found that if he wanted to, the domain could cover far more than 1,000 feet. 1,000 feet was only the range that Su Qin could completely control. Within this 1,000 feet, Su Qin was the creator, omnipotent. And once the domain covered more than 1,000 feet, Su Qin's control began to decline. Simply put, if a myth of the seventh heaven fell into Su Qin's domain, he would not be able to borrow any power and would still be slaughtered by Su Qin. He would not even be able to escape. But if Su Qin expanded the domain to 10,000 feet, if a myth of the seventh heaven fell into it, although he would still be greatly suppressed, he would not be unable to resist. At least he would struggle a few times. Next, in addition to continuing to practice hard, I have to continue to compress the power of heaven and earth to supplement the domain, so that the range of the domain will continue to increase. Su Qin's mind was filled with thoughts. At his current height, although the road ahead was not clear, he had a rough idea of how to proceed. Of course, for the vast majority of myths, knowing how to go and being able to go were two completely different things. For example, a level 9 official in the Empire of Tang knew that as long as he worked hard and worked for the Empire of Tang, he would be able to become a level 3 official in the imperial court. But among the thousands of level 9 officials in the Empire of Tang, how many could climb to the position of a level 3 official? Martial arts practice, especially the road to myth, was extremely difficult. Knowing may not be able to do it. Seeing may not be able to touch. Another 2 months of closed-door training. Su Qin was ready to familiarize himself with the power of the domain and was not in a hurry to go out. In any case, Chang'an City now had Ruan Qing, a third heaven legend, overseeing it. Generally, there would not be any problems. Su Qin was also happy to cultivate in seclusion. Just as Su Qin was in seclusion, the Emperor of Tang was in the Taiji Palace, discussing state affairs with his officials. Suddenly, a member of the Forbidden Army hurriedly rushed in, walked up to the Emperor of Tang, and whispered to him. What? The Emperor of Tang's face changed dramatically. The Emperor of Tang did not have time to attend the court meeting. He quickly walked out of the Taiji Palace and arrived at the imperial city. The Emperor of Tang's expression was extremely ugly. High up in the sky, 6 figures were faintly discernible. The 6 figures looked down on Chang'an City and the Emperor of Tang as if they were high and mighty creatures overlooking all living things. Who are they? The Emperor of Tang asked in a low voice after taking a deep breath. Your Majesty, I don't know. The commander of the Forbidden Army next to him looked dignified. After a moment of silence, he whispered, however, these people should be martial arts legends. Only martial arts legends could control the qi and soar in the wind. Therefore, even if the commander of the Forbidden Army had not seen the 6 figures in the sky, he knew that they were at least martial arts legends. As soon as the commander of the Forbidden Army said this, the Emperor of Tang's face suddenly turned pale. In the past, the appearance of one martial arts legend was already shocking, but now there were 6 outside Chang'an City at the same time. How could the Emperor of Tang be calm? Your Majesty, the one on the far left should be the founder of the Blood Kill Gate. The commander of the Forbidden Army seemed to have discovered something and quickly whispered. When the Emperor of Tang heard this, he immediately focused his eyes on the left and saw a figure in a blood-red robe standing in the void. Trouble. The Emperor of Tang felt a chill in his heart. If the founder of the Blood Kill Gate was not there, the Emperor of Tang still had a glimmer of hope that these 6 martial arts legends might just be passing by. But now, the Emperor of Tang felt like he was falling into an abyss. Your Majesty, what should we do now? The commander of the Forbidden Army asked in a low voice. The Emperor of Tang was powerless. Let's see what they want to do. What else could they do but wait? The 6 martial arts legends stood in the void. An ordinary army could not even touch them, let alone surround them. Although Chang and City had a large number of bows and crossbows, who would dare to use them against the 6 martial arts legends? Once the crossbows were used, it would be tantamount to completely falling out with the 6 martial arts legends. At that time, if the other party wanted to kill, who could stop them? 1 martial arts legend could ignore 1,000,000 troops, let alone 6. At this moment, high in the sky, several disciples from the major overseas sects were looking at Chang and City below in boredom. There is a level 3 aura. I think it must be the martial arts legend in Chang and City, the man in green with a sword said lightly. Level 3. Amazing. The Daoist in a Daoist robe nodded slightly. To be able to enter the martial arts legend realm in this barren continent, and even a level 3 legend, regardless of talent or temperament, was the best choice. Unfortunately, as a martial arts legend, his foundation has been set. He will never be able to join our sect, a cold man in a black robe said. Well, what should we do now? Directly suppress them? The burly man said unhappily. Suppress them? Bing Ling, the woman in white, thought for a while and said, let's inform them first. If they refuse, it won't be too late to kill them. Bing Ling was the current goddess of the Snow God Palace. If nothing unexpected happened, she would inevitably become the palace lord of the Snow God Palace in the future. She was the person with the highest status in the field. In that case, go down and tell them. The cold man in black swept his eyes and looked at the Patriarch of Bloodkill in the corner. In terms of status, the Patriarch of Bloodkill was not on the same level as them. Whether it was the cold man in black or the others, they were all proud sons of heaven from various major sections. As for the Patriarch of Bloodkill, he was just a rogue cultivator. Although he had the strength of a level 3, he was far from being in their eyes. If they didn't need someone to lead the way, the Patriarch of Bloodkill happened to be a martial arts legend from this continent, so they wouldn't be with him. The Patriarch of Bloodkill respectfully said. So, the Patriarch of Bloodkill took a step forward and appeared on the city wall. Everyone, the Empire of Tang has given you 2 choices. The Patriarch of Bloodkill looked at the Emperor of Tang and the others and said lightly, the first is to surrender, and the second is to be suppressed by this lord and then surrender. Think about it in half an hour and then give your reply. The Patriarch of Bloodkill didn't even look at the Emperor of Tang and turned to leave. Surrender? Then surrender after being suppressed. The Emperor of Tang's face was livid and trembled with anger. Your Majesty! The commander of the Forbidden Army next to him also had a heavy expression. Instead of giving them 2 choices, it was better to say that the Patriarch of Bloodkill directly asked them to surrender. Has the 3rd brother appeared? The Emperor of Tang took a deep breath and asked in a low voice. Your Majesty, we haven't found the Imperial uncle yet. The commander of the Forbidden Army shook his head. As soon as these words came out, the Emperor of Tang's face turned pale again. Could it be that the heavens want to destroy the Empire of Tang? The Emperor of Tang's face was pale. At this moment, high in the sky, the man in black with a long sword on his back frowned. Half an hour has passed, has the Empire of Tang replied? My lord, no. The Patriarch of Bloodkill bowed. In that case, just suppress them. The cold man in black said. I already said to suppress them, but you just had to waste half an hour. The burly man snorted coldly, took a step forward, and stomped his foot fiercely. Suddenly, the world's essence chi shook and slowly pressed down on the imperial city. At this moment, the same world's essence chi emerged and blocked the blow of the burly man. Ruan Qing slowly walked out of the East Palace, came to the city wall, and looked at the legends. Mr. Ruan. The Emperor of Tang breathed a sigh of relief. Your Majesty, I can only do my best, but whether I can stop them or not, I can only leave it to fate. Ruan Qing said with a tragic face. In Ruan Qing's eyes, these disciples of the greater sects had been cultivated by the sects since childhood. Whether it was cultivation methods, secret techniques, or even foundation, they were far superior to rogue cultivators like Ruan Qing. Let me try. I haven't fought in a long time. High in the sky, a Daoist in a Daoist robe stood out. Seeing this, Ruan Qing also stood in the air and fought with the Daoist in a Daoist robe. However, the result was just as Ruan Qing expected. He was no match for the Daoist at all. After just 10 moves, he was suppressed. After 20 moves, Ruan Qing spat out a mouthful of blood and was sent flying. And this was because the Daoist had deliberately held back. Otherwise, Ruan Qing would have at least been seriously injured, if not killed on the spot. I told you to submit and suffer less. Why struggle? The burly man looked down at the Emperor of Tang and the others and sneered. The Emperor of Tang's face was ashen. He clenched his hands tightly and dared not refute, because he knew that the lives of countless people in Chang, in city, depended on the burly man's thoughts. The burly man sneered and scanned the imperial palace with his divine sense. At this moment, the burly man was surprised and his divine sense instantly focused on someone. Meridians clear, a genius. Come back with me obediently. The burly man stretched out his right hand and gathered a huge essence chi palm and grabbed at a certain place in the imperial palace. Not good, it's one of... The Emperor of Tang was shocked and recognized the place where the burly man's right hand was grabbing. It was the residence of Imperial Princess Li Wan. What is this? Li Wan was cultivating when she saw a huge palm quickly grabbing at her. Not good. Li Wan realized that something was wrong and wanted to avoid it. However, Li Wan was just a martial artist in the Middle Realm. How could she escape the grasp of a legend? Just when Li Wan's face was full of despair, the burly man's huge palm was about 3 feet away from Li Wan when it was suddenly blocked by a faint barrier. There is another legend. The burly man immediately recognized the barrier on Li Wan's body. It was the means left by a legend. But so what? The burly man's face was ferocious and he was about to break the barrier. Under Chang'an City, in the majestic hall, Su Qin silently opened his eyes. The divine sense I left on Li Wan was triggered? Su Qin looked up at the sky and his huge divine sense swept over in an instant. You're courting death. Su Qin's eyes were calm. He stretched out his right hand and pulled out a strange sickle-shaped long blade that was curved like a full moon. The long blade was as black as ink, and the blade was incomparably deep, like a black hole that swallows all living things. The next moment, Su Qin held the demon god's blade and gently slashed. No one could describe the sharpness of this blade. The sky and the ground turned into a pitch-black sea. A long and narrow black crack appeared in space. The pitch-black saber light seemed to be able to cut the world apart as it shot out in an instant. P.S. Looking for monthly votes, there are no more below. Although I have updated 3 chapters today, the word count is close to 10,000 words. Should it be considered an extra update? Finally, looking for a guaranteed monthly vote. It's the beginning of the month, I know you must have some in stock. The word count in the PS is free. Chapter 198. Inside the palace. Li Wan was still in shock. She looked at the barrier that enveloped her and quickly found the source of the barrier. It was the piece of wood with a sword mark engraved on it. At this moment, this piece of wood was emitting a dim light, like a candle in the dark. Third uncle? Li Wan blinked. This piece of wood was given to her by Su Qin, and the sword mark engraved on it was also left by Su Qin. And at this moment, The burly man standing high in the sky frowned slightly. This barrier, suddenly. The rough man seemed to have noticed something and suddenly looked in another direction. A pitch-black saber light arrived in an instant. This pitch-black saber light seemed to have torn open a long and narrow crack in space. The moment the burly man saw it, it was already within 10 meters of him. No! The boorish man was indeed a descendant of a great overseas sect. At this critical moment of life and death, he activated a forbidden secret technique. His body suddenly expanded by a large margin, turning into a small giant more than 5 meters tall. A wild and heavy aura began to spread out. The overseas sect that the rough man belonged to was known for their physical strength. At this moment, he used a forbidden secret technique as a guide and burned his essence and blood to enhance his physical strength to a certain extreme. The next moment, before the boorish man could react, a voice rang out. That long, narrow, and pitch-black blade light arrived. This long and narrow blade light easily cut through the rough man's flesh and blood and cut through his bones. The body that the rough man was proud of was like a piece of paper under this blade light. Rip. The rough man's body was cut in two and fell from the sky. A large amount of blood of a legend spilled down. At the same time, as soon as the rough man's divine sense was about to escape, he felt an aura that seemed to come from the abyss of hell frantically spread. In an instant, his divine sense was completely decayed and his body and soul were destroyed. This is? Not far away, several disciples from the exalted sects from the outer seas narrowed their eyes, including Bing Ling, the goddess of Snow God Palace. As legends, their divine sense could cover the surrounding dozens of meters at any time, but even so, no one noticed why the burly man was suddenly cut in two. What exactly happened? The azure-robed man with a long sword on his back was horrified. He retreated several hundred meters and looked around vigilantly. Now that the boorish man had died, they were at most shocked. However, the boorish man's death was so inexplicable that there wasn't even the slightest sign of it. This was terrifying. Someone has made a move. Bing Ling, the current goddess of the Snow God Palace, said with a solemn expression. When the others heard this, they immediately rolled their eyes. The boorish man had died without a complete corpse. Of course, they knew that someone had done it. But the question now was, who was the culprit? Compared to the uneasiness of the disciples of the major sects, the Emperor of Tang and the others were ecstatic. Third brother, it's the third brother, the Emperor of Tang said with certainty. Although he didn't see Su Qin from the beginning to the end, he had a feeling that the person who killed the boorish man was Su Qin. Master? Ruan Qing stood up with a pale face. Although he was at a disadvantage in the fight with the Daoist in a Daoist robe and was sent flying in the end, he wasn't seriously injured because the Daoist had been merciful. At this moment he was barely able to stand up. And at this moment, a tall and slender figure walked over step by step. This figure held a strange long saber in his right hand that was shaped like a sickle and curved like a full moon. The tip of the saber was pointed to the ground as he walked over unhurriedly. Who is he? The current goddess of the Snow God Palace noticed this figure immediately and her eyes quickly focused on him. The other disciples of the major sects also looked as if they were facing a formidable enemy. The death of the boorish man just now was too strange. Although these disciples of the major sects were arrogant, they were not stupid. It's the third brother. The Emperor of Tang heaved a sigh of relief. Until now, the Emperor of Tang was completely relieved. You must be the legendary warrior in Chang'an City, right? The cold-looking man in a black robe forced a smile and cupped his hands toward Su Qin. His attitude was extremely humble, without the slightest arrogance of a disciple of the major sections. In fact, Su Qin had just killed the boorish man silently. Just based on this point alone, his strength had surpassed them and was at least close to the master of the major sections. Since you are here, we won't disturb you, the cold-looking man in a black robe said. In his view, they had taken the initiative to retreat, which was already considered as giving in. If Su Qin had a little bit of insight, he wouldn't pursue the matter. Humph. When I return to the sect, I will ask Master to kill all the living beings in this city, The cold-looking man in a black robe thought quickly in his heart, but his expression became more and more humble. The sect he belonged to was not the righteous path, so killing living beings was normal. The current goddess of the snow god palace, Bing Ling, and the others looked at Su Qin, wanting to see Su Qin's reaction. Third brother. The Emperor of Tang looked at Su Qin with a worried expression. Under everyone's gaze, Su Qin finally spoke. "Want to leave?" A trace of sarcasm appeared on Su Qin's face. "You broke into this place and still want to leave alive?" As soon as Su Qin finished speaking, he gently waved the demon god's blade in his right hand at the cold-looking man in a black robe. "You." The cold-looking man in a black robe was shocked. Then he felt an unprecedented sense of danger. This sense of danger was even greater than the one he felt when he was still in the depths of the sea. It was a primordial sea beast that seemed to have survived from the ancient times. The next moment, the cold-looking man in a black robe saw a blade light as black as ink coming at him in an instant. "Disperse!" The cold-looking man in a black robe did not have time to think about why Su Qin would act so decisively. At this moment, there was only one thought in his mind. "I must live." The black-robed man's body suddenly turned pitch black, as if he was turning from real to illusory. Illusory devil body? The current goddess of the snow god palace's expression changed. Illusory devil body was the fundamental cultivation method of the sect that the cold-looking man in a black robe belonged to. When cultivated to a certain level, one could change between real and illusory at will, thus achieving the effect of ignoring all attacks. At this moment, Su Qin's black blade light slashed through the darkness that the cold-looking man in a black robe had turned into. Instantly, the originally illusory darkness was directly cut in two. The body of the cold-looking man in a black robe materialized and fell straight from the sky. Dead. The current goddess of the snow god palace's expression suddenly changed. "Run!" The patriarch of the Blood Kill sect was terrified. Without hesitation, he turned into a bloody light and fled into the distance. Su Qin's expression was neither happy nor sad. Holding the demon god's blade, he slashed at the patriarch of the Blood Kill sect. The black blade light that was like a crack cut across the sky. Without any suspense, the patriarch of the Blood Kill sect was cut in two, entering the path of the rough man and the cold-looking man in a black robe. "And you?" Su Qin's gaze turned and looked at the man in a black robe with a long sword on his back. "Die." Su Qin held the demon god's blade and slashed down casually. 10,000 swords return. The man in a black robe with a long sword on his back suddenly went crazy. He had seen 3 legends die in a row. How could he not know that it was his turn next? The long sword on the man in a black robe suddenly bloomed with a bright sword light. 1 into 2, 2 into 4, 4 into 8. Almost instantaneously, it split into countless sword lights and blocked in front of him. Not bad, but unfortunately, it's not enough. Su Qin shook his head slightly. The black blade light instantly broke through the layers of sword lights and directly cut the long sword that the man in a black robe had pulled out from his back in two. Finally, it slashed through the man in a black robe. There was dead silence. Everyone's face was full of horror. They never dreamed that the high and mighty legends of this era would be slaughtered like chickens in front of Su Qin, one slash after another. Third brother is too strong. The Emperor of Tang was also stunned. In the Emperor of Tang's eyes, Su Qin might have taken advantage of the sneak attack of the rugged man who died at the beginning, but the other 3 legends were killed by Su Qin head-on. Just as everyone was shocked, Su Qin's expression didn't change at all. He slowly looked at Bing Ling, the current saintess of the Snow God Palace. "You still have the courage to stand here?" Su Qin looked at Bing Ling with interest. At this moment, although the current saintess of the Snow God Palace was also frightened, she didn't run away in a hurry like the patriarch of Blood Kill. "Your Excellency's strength is terrifying. Even if I run, I can't escape." Bing Ling, the current saintess of the Snow God Palace, took a deep breath and said calmly, "Let me guess. You didn't run not because you're not afraid of death, but because you have some kind of trump card." Did your sect give it to you? Su Qin naturally didn't believe in the saying, if you can't escape, then don't run. Even ants craved for life, let alone these heavenly talents from the great sects. How do you know? Bing Ling's expression changed drastically. She did have a life-saving item given to her by one of the patriarchs of the Snow God Palace. However, the price of using this life-saving item was too high. Bing Ling had to abandon her physical body and use her divine will to teleport thousands of miles away in an instant. At that time, the patriarch of the Snow God Palace warned Bing Ling not to use this trump card unless it was a matter of life and death. This was because the loss of one's physical body would have an unprecedented impact on any martial artist. Even if she eventually took over a new physical body, her future achievements would be limited due to compatibility issues. In serious cases, her strength would plummet by several levels. However, the patriarch also said that as long as she used this trump card, no one in the world could stop her. This was the reason why Bing Ling was still standing there. She wasn't like the others who would die if they didn't run. She had other options. At worst, she would use this trump card to save her life. Losing her physical body was better than dying completely. Your Excellency is very powerful. I'll take my leave first. I hope we'll have a chance to meet again in the future. When the current goddess of the Snow God Palace saw that Su Qin had seen through her confidence at a glance, she didn't dare to stay any longer. Without hesitation, she activated a certain aura in her body. Instantly, Bing Ling felt her consciousness rise infinitely. With all her divine will, she left her physical body and fled toward the sea at an extremely terrifying speed. You're indeed very fast. Su Qin nodded slightly and commented. Even he couldn't compare with her in terms of pure speed when she abandoned her physical body and only used her divine will. However, do you want to run away in my domain? A smile appeared on Su Qin's face. With a thought, an invisible force spread out. The patriarch said that as long as I activate that aura and abandon my physical body, even a 7th heaven or 8th heaven legend won't be able to catch up with me. Bing Ling's thoughts fluctuated. She only felt that she was completely safe. When I return to the Snow God Palace, I must inform the patriarch and avenge me. Before Bing Ling finished her thought, she was stunned. Because she was still in the palace after fleeing for such a long time. This is... Bing Ling vaguely felt an invisible force enveloping her. Under this force, the space was stretched infinitely. Lord, Bing Ling suddenly thought of a record in the Snow God Palace. Her heart was in turmoil. However, before Bing Ling could say those 2 words, she felt her vision go black. Her thoughts fell into endless darkness. Welcome to Legends of Cultivation, audiobooks, where we bring ancient fantasy to life through storytelling. Follow the rise of heroes who defy fate, unlock mystical powers, and battle across celestial realms. Our audiobooks are crafted for fans of Chinese cultivation novels, filled with battles, breakthroughs, and legendary artifacts. Subscribe and be part of an unforgettable journey into the realm of immortality.